So we've defined healthy and in the series that we've been doing together. The second time we did like talking about the mindset for health and how to approach different problems, which included, how does the brain work, and when we're most productive in the present moment. Then the third time we talked about meditation, mindfulness, and other tools to build awareness. And last time we talked about how do we live like a fluid and not a rigid Jewish lifestyle. And now I have in store, I was talking about the science of transformation, including, what does Hasidus say about transformation? And just to get that started a little bit, we know with a lot of latest understandings with science, let's say somebody's trying to break an addiction or a certain way of thinking, feeling, or acting. They have to change the way that they've been, living. And when it comes to like an addiction, when somebody's been doing something for so long, it becomes a habit. And it helps to know the science of the transformation to uproot that behavior that we could label negative or unserving, because that understanding of the science of transformation will help the person go through those challenging times. Because similar to like what the Rebbe would say on a macro scale, the greater the darkness, so to speak, the closer you are to the transformation. So it's similar on a health standpoint. Let's say somebody's introducing a new healthy way of living or wanting to break an addiction, like I just mentioned. When it gets really challenging and you want to just do what you've always done, the harder it gets or the more intense it feels, it means you're actually closer to changing and transforming that behavior. And so, like I said, that was just a little introduction, and I'd love to hear your understanding about that, and perhaps in your own life, or how you have helped other individuals, whether it's just in health or even in relationships, because it applies, across the board in different areas of life. Even within the brain, how to change and rewire, how to unwire limited or unserving ways of thinking, feeling, and acting, and how to then determine a new behavior or to break an addiction, the process of uprooting it and being able to finally transform it.
So what does science say about that? What advice does it give?
Yeah. So a lot that I learned, and that's part of like with the previous topics we've talked about meditation, is let's say somebody wants to break an addiction to a way that they've been expressing like one of their character traits. Maybe they've been feeling and act insecure. You have to first become aware of, well, how do you want to express yourself? What kind of person do you want to become? And then you have to become aware of all the different, let's say, triggers or situations that give birth to the person exhibiting that characteristic. The more and more you can become aware of it, then when you are in those situations or similar situations, you can begin to change the way that somebody normally acts or reacts in that situation. So that what the science is saying is that those experience also but they also show up on a brain as different neural connections. So literally when you're in those experiences or similar experiences, those similar connections kind of turn on. So that's where the meditation comes in, because you have to become aware and more and more of those different situations. And then, like when you can rehearse it in the meditation, then when you get to a similar experience and you change that, you begin to unwire those old habits and ways of being. And you can, by changing that reaction or response, it begins to lay the foundation for new experiences. in Hasidus talks all, a lot about it as, changing one's character traits is, and transforming and making a transformation is like uprooting a tree, and it is very challenging. So I love to merge the two and how they are complementary of each other.
So I think we have already spoken about the relationship between the mind and heart. By nature, not by nurture, by nature, the mind controls everything.
Mm-hmm.
No sane person will do something that his mind does not approve. So even when a person is out of control emotionally, the mind is aware of it. The person will come
Mm-hmm.
and say, I acted crazy. I was out of my mind. I didn't know what I was doing. So he's fully conscious of the fact that his behavior was totally unacceptable. So getting the heart to obey the mind is simply being healthy. And the question is, how does it happen that the heart goes off on its own and does its own thing without consulting the mind? Which visually is pretty much the same as sleepwalking. How does the body go off on a stroll without the mind? Or even talking in your sleep? The brain is not engaged. So it's the mouth doing its own thing, independent of the mind. Well, how does that happen? Because that shouldn't happen. It's not natural. And that's why when you hear somebody speaking in their sleep, it's kind of spooky. There's something ghostly about it or something. Walking in the sleep is really frightening to see it, because it's zombie-like. It's crazy. Anyway, so the same is true, and the heart is doing its own thing without consulting the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Should never happen. However, we feed the heart for years before the mind even has a chance to mature. So through our childhood years, we are exercising the emotions without intelligence. So the emotions get a 12 or 13-year head start on your mind. That becomes a habit.
Mm-hmm.
Now the mind matures and says, okay, I'm taking over. And the heart says, not over me, you're not.
That's so easy.
Not over this, you're not. So how do we bring back? You don't have to create anything new.
Yeah, return.
How do we bring back that healthy relationship between mind and heart? Overcoming the habit of many years.
Mm-hmm.
So here too, it is natural, just as the mind would naturally control the emotions if it were mature. Now that it is mature, it can not only control the emotions, but it can actually reverse them.
Mm-hmm.
So the mind has the authority to do that. And to a great degree, it does. So that the person, although as a child indulged and entitled and permissive upbringing, when the kid becomes a little more mature and intelligent, without much effort, everything changes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want a candy anymore. I want $1. Not $1, $5. No, a car. See, all of a sudden, the emotions have matured because the mind has.
Hmm.
You do get stuck in certain habits, but there's also progress. Nobody remains literally a 10-year-old when they're in their 20s.
Like you said, not literal, but the way that they see things could still not have matured.
In one or two areas, like when it comes to money, or when it comes to parents, or when it comes to the opposite gender, there's a those things kind of get stuck in their child phase, and it doesn't move up with the rest of the person. But whether he thinks about it or not, the body becomes more mature. So thinking about
What do
it,
you mean?
maturity happens sometimes without your participation. Maturity is
You
not
mean
a
like it just grows?
huh?
You can still see like a child, so to speak, in a grown up body.
Right. Very rarely is it the entire person. If every part of you does not
Interesting.
mature, there's a word for it, and they put you in a special school or in a special home, whatever. Usually, the person does mature in many areas, and then one or two areas kind of don't keep up. Just like your baby teeth fall out and the adult teeth come in, whether you think about it or not, your childish, immature emotions fall out, and the more mature emotions replace them, even if you're not paying attention. Of course, it's better if you do pay attention, because you may outgrow the childish, but you're not really sure what to replace it with. So it becomes ridiculous. A grown up making a fool of himself. Or there is one or two areas in which it doesn't happen. You're going to have to make it happen in those areas. That's number one. Number two, when you have an animal soul and a godly soul, well, that kind of changes the whole dynamic. So your godly soul is saying, let's be mature. Your body is saying no. Why doesn't your godly soul have the authority to affect the body, the heart, the emotions?
Well, in a way, it does, because it still is what created those behaviors in the body. It just at an early stage before it was really conscious. Like that's where we have those. We at the young age conclude different beliefs about different situations, like I'm not worthy, or I don't want to take in love, or I need to hide and not show who I am, things like that.
So, in which of the two souls does that happen?
Well, I would say that it starts ultimately in there's some kind of experience somebody has, child or the young person has, and it creates some kind of internal change that they don't know how to handle, or what to do with it, how to handle those emotions, and they conclude in the intellect some kind of belief. And so I would say the intellect would that be connected with the godly soul, that's what's making or deciding, this is what happened in this situation, and that's then programming the body, the animal soul, to then whenever a similar situation comes up, you know it responds in a similar fashion. So it becomes programmed in the body or the animal soul, but ultimately, if it starts, and even in the Tanya, if I remember correctly, that's what ultimately it all starts from the intellect, which is the godly soul.
So here's an important distinction.
Okay.
The same dynamic happens in the animal soul itself. Let's call it the human soul.
Okay.
Within the human soul, there is the mind and the heart, because each soul has its own mind
Mm-hmm.
and its own emotions. So, in the human soul itself, the mind has authority over the heart, because the heart wants.
Yeah.
The heart wants direction, guidance, instruction. It doesn't want to. Doesn't want to decide.
Exactly.
It desires. It develops a desire, but it doesn't want to decide whether it should or shouldn't do it.
So it develops a desire based on what the mind is deciding it wants or not.
Is acceptable, thinkable, doable, right?
Yeah.
What is beyond the pale to the mind, the heart will not go there. What the mind allows, that's where the heart will play.
Mm-hmm.
Like this guy who says, I'm very embarrassed and I feel terrible, but I hit my wife. She got me angry. I knew this was going to happen. And I told her, don't get me angry. But she did. And I lost control and I hit her. I said, did you hit her with a bat? With a brick? He says, oh, don't be crazy. And says, so you didn't lose control. Even when you were at your angriest, it never occurred to you to hit her with a bat. That's crazy. But hitting her with your hand, not so crazy. So your mind gave you permission to hit her.
Interesting.
You didn't lose control. You gave yourself permission. Rationally, because you could distinguish between a slap and, yeah.
Wow.
So you didn't really lose control. Very seldom that people lose control.
Yeah.
So in the animal soul, the mind governs the heart. Without morality, without godliness, without humility, just by nature, the mind has more authority than the heart. I think the practical explanation or reason is because the mind knows what's going on. So, should I be afraid? Should I panic? Well, how should the heart know? Doesn't even know what are we panicking about? I don't even know what's going on.
That this is where I think you're getting it at, but this is where sometimes though the mind, because it's also very limited, can
Panic.
make a conclusion that doesn't end up actually helping the person. So then the heart thinks it's unsafe in a place that it's actually really safe.
So then the mind is correct and the heart is wrong. But there are times when the mind is wrong. But how is your heart supposed to know that?
Exactly.
So in the animal soul itself, in the human soul itself, a mensch, not godly, totally human, but a human being by definition is governed by intelligence, not by emotions. Now, this doesn't mean that a healthy human being is dispassionate about everything. Passion is a good thing. Passion is a sign of life. Passion is a sign of intelligence, actually. Without passion, you're not really alive. You're tepid. But in the interaction, in the dance between the mind and the heart, the mind must lead so that the heart will also dance. So the heart is not being rejected, it's guided. So the first step is, if the heart is not obeying the mind, first step is get healthy.
Yeah.
Don't get mystical. Don't get spiritual. Just get healthy. Because a healthy person is the master of his ship. Like the soldier that I was reading someplace, and he said, "I'm going to go take a nap." And the other soldier said, "Under these conditions, how could you sleep?" He said, "My body obeys me. When I tell it to sleep, it sleeps." That is a human being. He is the master of the ship. So when he says sleep, the body goes to sleep. He says wake up, the body wakes up. So that's just the nature of the beast. Like if you can't get your dog to behave and to listen to you, it's not natural. So you need somebody to come in and train the dog for you. But by nature, your dog obeys you. If it hasn't had bad experiences beforehand, if he's not already traumatized and all that.
Yeah.
So what would it take to get your heart to obey your mind again?
Yeah. Or because where is the where is the lodging, so to speak, of the new awareness that I've told my heart and my body to act this way, around this person, and now somebody comes across through whatever way this new understanding. Let's say that, oh, if I'm acting frustrated around this person, I'm allowing that person, which is something outside of me, to be a certain way. And so now I have this new awareness. Oh wow, it's not that person, it's me. So now next time I'm around that person, I need to change the way that I'm reacting, and then now get my heart to obey me again, but in this different, more empowering way.
So if the trauma is in the body, I think we spoke
Which
about
it
this
is more.
last
Yeah.
week. If the trauma is in the body, then you have to get your body to neurologically
Yeah.
change its behavior.
Mm-hmm.
The trigger effect. Now that can be done through deep muscle massage, through somatic experiencing.
Yeah. Well, even through meditation.
Yes. But it's even better if you bring about a change in the behavior of the animal soul by changing its mind.
So that's what the complete transformation is. It's referring to, like where it's in next time, it's completely rewired.
Yeah. Literally becomes a different place,
Mm.
a new reality.
Mm.
Like, for example, with a Kohen, you want a complete transformation. So you can go back to serving in the temple. So the change has to be factual, tangible. But there's nothing more powerful than the will to get the body to behave. So this transformation is partly in the mind, but partly in the soul. That's why, in a sense, Yaakov, who is one emotion, can say to the others, Avraham and Yitzchak, change, adjust, adapt, because we have the option. There are options, there are always options. When a person starts to feel, no, there are no more options, I'm stuck. Now we've got some trauma. Now we have some pathology. Because stuck. So how do you change the emotional is, I think, more important than how do you change the biological, if they're not the same thing.
Well, I am pretty sure it would be the same.
So emotions are all part of biology?
Well, let's say emotion, energy and motion, like, yeah, because it expressed, because you the emotion is the end product of an experience. Like you say, after you have some kind of experience with, let's say, like using just the same analogy, or even the one you were sharing before, the man that slapped his wife. Let's say if he continues and he's aware of it, and now he begins to rehearse, and he becomes aware, next time my wife and I get in an argument, he also wants to work on getting away from that. But let's say he gets an argument, but he wants to become aware that next time he gets in an argument, he doesn't want to hit his wife. He wants to, just stop at perhaps screaming, at least from the first time. Now he has to, like, once he actually accomplishes that, let's say after he rehearses it and practices it, and now he gets in that similar experience, and his wife says something that makes him want to hit her, but instead he catches that, and he has that kind of aha moment, and he realizes it, and now he changes it. That is an emotional change, because he'll have some kind of emotional awareness now, but that's also in the body, because he's no longer taking out that action. I would say it is interchangeable.
Except that the most thorough change, you can have shallow, superficial change, or you can have thorough, lasting change. If the change is in the head, that is the most lasting change.
And what would that be in that example?
I never realized how wrong I was.
Yeah.
I never realized how damaging this thing is. I never realized how unnatural this is. When that light bulb goes off, or goes on, actually, when that light bulb goes on, you see a very different world. So, practicing mind over heart, very healthy thing.
The behavior.
There are plenty of challenges all the time. So the best place to practice is with food. So if the mind can get the body to delay eating for a few minutes. I know you're hungry. Wait 5 minutes. 5 minutes. It's not a terribly difficult thing to do. Just go wash your hands. It'll take 5 minutes. But do it to establish your authority over your heart. And that's why you simply bow at the knees You don't fall on your face like on Yom Kippur. Because it doesn't need that kind of humility. All it needs is get the mind back in charge. So you got to find out how many how many band-aids have already been applied that need to be removed to allow the healing to happen. So delay eating just for 5 minutes, just to show that you're in charge, that you're in charge of your biology. Eventually you become good at it, and you really, really start to control your imagination, what you see, what you hear.
Mm-hmm.
You literally gain control over things you thought were impossible to control. So don't not eat, not recommending fasting, but whatever's on the plate, let it sit for another few minutes. Or eat the food you like somewhat less and skip your most favorite food. So we're not tampering with your eating or with your health. We're just trying to go softer on the panic. That's for the animal soul.
Mm-hmm.
The animal soul simply needs to get back the discipline that the mind governs the heart. Now, if we go a little deeper, which I think we must in today's day and age, what does it mean that the mind has lost control over the heart? Something wrong with the mind? No?
Well, I think you just brought up the question, but it doesn't seem like the mind lost control of the heart, but that the mind kind of lost control over itself in a way, or more so maybe even the godly soul, the soul lost control over the mind.
The mind,
we think that.
yeah,
Go ahead.
the mind can lose control by being overwhelmed by the emotions' violence or the emotions' intensity. So the mind backs off. But the emotions are always more noisy. They're not necessarily stronger. So if the heart does respond, it's a panic. It's a panic response.
Because those emotions also, because of the limbic brain that it reacts like 3 times faster than it before it even gets to the conscious part of the brain. That's why you can go into like an environment and you can feel like sudden like fear if it's a familiar place, and that's the emotion that you feel there before it even makes it to your mind.
Right. So practicing mind over heart, very, very healthy. You're playing ball and it's very hot and you want a cold drink. Don't do it. That's a good idea. You set aside a coin or a bottle of something every time you need to discipline yourself. So it's like a fine. You fine yourself for losing control. No, but this is the serious thing. If the emotions, the impulses, have gotten so intense, so inflexible, so unreasonable that it must happen, even while your mind is saying no. It's not the mind's heart, the mind's fault. It is the heart. Like a child throwing a tantrum, there really isn't much a parent can do, except let him express himself, get it out of his system, and afterwards he'll be fine. But there's nothing you can do. You should get out of the way. Don't be available for your kid to hit you. It should be very bad for the kid. So part of the reason that the emotions become so Catholic, it's a good word. Catholic meaning inflexible, non-negotiable, but the camera can see without the basket. Baskets are there for other things. So if in the mind it is really clear, I am here to do 100 more things, that changes everything. When there's something on your desk that you have no desire to do, but you have to do it, that's the discipline that is missing. And we haven't introduced God yet.
So we'll have to probably include that in the next video, but also I wanted to bring up when it comes to, different, let's say, emotions people live by. Let's say somebody has it's become a habit to act, to feel, insecure or anxious in different situations. There's also a complex understanding or process to that transformation of having to like slow down the brain waves and get into the body like you touched on earlier, but also in the brain to allow it to relax so the person can change that automatic way of living.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's simple, it's relatively easier to somebody now just to become a little bit healthier, but when it's becomes so programmed that that they don't believe that, let's say, they're worth it becoming healthier, then there's the process of transformation is quite a bit more complex, and the work that needs to be, the inner work to change that.
Which means there's a deeper layer that also needs fixing. So if we could get to the deeper layer without getting to the lower layer, would that work? Can we skip the middleman?
Yeah. So it depends on how on the practice and how deep you could go. Let's say where people maybe have those different spontaneous changes of their state of being. Somebody could be a often anxious person, and then they go so deep in a meditation that it completely rewires their brain, and next thing you know, they're calm. They released whatever that trauma was.
Okay, so one of those rearrangements of the brain is discovering the purpose for which you exist. Nothing changes you more than that. You feel
now that's real health.
You feel really reborn. So that's the godly soul's place or job. There's recognizing your needs. which are important. Recognizing your strengths and weaknesses, very important. Then there's figuring out the why. I'm good at this and I'm good at that, not good at something else. Why? Why am I gifted in any area at all? What did I do to deserve it? The answer might very well be you don't deserve it. God needs you to document this event to show how He works. But you never turn the camera on yourself because you're not the subject. Same is true with every animal. It doesn't wake up every morning with this idea. But on some instinctive level, even the animal has that. I am here, the cow has some kind of recognition. I'm here to be a cow. And so the cow goes about being a cow loyally, religiously, without exception. You never catch a cow acting like anything but a cow. But you find people acting like animals or fish or birds. So the most powerful that brings about the most permanent change, transformation, is to discover the purpose in life. Everything changes. Well, let's talk a little more about the mind and the heart. How does the mind affect the heart? They don't speak the same language. They're so different in temperament. They're so different in personality. They're so different in everything. How can they communicate? How does the mind control the heart? Because to the heart, the mind should be completely irrelevant. The heart works on emotions, the heart works on instinct, the heart works on habit, and the mind is always coming up with new ideas. Who would let the new ideas into a hospital ward where you're trying to be as scientific and as natural or secular as you can? So the first thing is, how can the mind control the heart? And secondly, what kind of control does it have? What do you mean control? Stands by the door with a whip and says, you can't go there? So the effect is not that the emotions are smothered. You never want that to happen. So becoming just completely cerebral is not the goal at all.
Mm-mm.
You don't want to become a walking brain. But the major difference between emotions and intellect is that intelligence is objective. Okay. The mind wants to know. It doesn't really want to twist facts. It doesn't want to make up its own fake news. It wants to know. It's completely innocent. But also, let's not talk about why. Let's talk about what. The mind is objective. The heart is completely subjective. The difference between objective and subjective is that objective is negotiable. So in a person's mind,
I see. Okay.
he decides to get angry.
Mm-hmm.
You can negotiate with the mind. You can say, I see you decided to get angry, but really, do you need to be angry? And the mind is capable of saying, no, I guess not.
Well, that's what you're saying. That would be your your
intelligence.
So you're okay. So by intelligence, you mean really like it's beyond the mind. I'm thinking that intelligence would be mind. Your brain would be what you said as mind, because there's a difference between brain and mind.
Right. The brain is more biological.
Yeah. And so that's what you meant as mind, and then intelligence is beyond that. Like that consciousness, that awareness. To have that awareness, like you're saying, the mind in a situation can be frustrated, but then you can have that awareness, like, do I really need to be frustrated right now? No, I can change that and tell the mind a different way to,
because the mind is open to suggestion. Mm-hmm. That's called objective.
Yeah.
The heart, the emotions are completely subjective, which means there's no negotiation. You can't come to the angry heart and say, maybe you don't need to be angry. That sounds crazy. What do you mean, maybe I don't need to be? I am. Get real. That's why sometimes you find intellectual people very frustrating. Mm-hmm. They're always changing their mind. Hopefully with a better idea, but not necessarily. So practically, when you're electing a president, don't elect an intellectual. Nothing will ever happen. Everything will be a discussion, a debate, a conference. There'll be talk. Nothing will ever happen. Unless the intellectual is fanatical about his position. And you happen to agree with that position. Then you elect him. But if you have a liberal, open-minded president, you have nothing. Nobody's running the show. Because the nature of intelligence is, I can always come up with a better explanation. And a better explanation will change the outcome. So when they made this thing, I don't know if you can see it, in the olden days, things were much more fixed. They weren't so flexible. Life was pretty much determined by circumstances. If you come from a rich family, you're going to be rich. Come from a poor family, you're going to be poor. If you're an insider, you're an insider. Outsider, it's not going to change. Mm-hmm. People were accustomed to being one thing in one place all their life. It's like this one resident of Manchester in England who said, I've never left Manchester. I've never been outside of Manchester. And that was like shocking. You've never left Manchester? Way too rigid. So the heart or the emotions, way too rigid. When I'm angry, I'm angry. Don't you dare suggest that I don't need to be. You mocking me? So the emotions are very defensive. I am what I am. What do you mean maybe I shouldn't? You're telling me I'm not valid? Can't handle it. What effect can the mind have on the heart? It can't make the heart intelligent. That's ridiculous. But it can make the heart a little more flexible, like intelligence. So it's emotions, but with the flexibility of intelligence. That much we can accomplish.
Like you can train it.
Yes.
How to be.
In this one area, so that you can come to the emotion that is angry or hurt or frightened and say, that's enough, you don't have to do that anymore. And the heart can actually say, yeah, right, you're right. And just
There's a lot of healing that goes into that, though, because there's a lot of that what we call the inner child work. So you have to come to that point where it's almost like the mind is right with the heart, and it's that young child within you that's frustrated or whatever the emotion is about some kind of experience, and now the mind is training it. It is okay. I appreciate you for protecting me, so to speak, from this situation with this experience, but we no longer have to be like that.
It's not limited to the experience. It's a different heart. The heart has become like a brain. It can be objective about whatever feeling comes along. So it's not a remedy for a particular problem. It's a heart with a high IQ. That's what they call intelligent emotions. But midos al pi seichel. So it's a different person. It's not just a cure for this particular trauma. And that's what's so impressive or awesome about it. You have an entirely different nature to the emotions. They're still spontaneous, the way emotions should be. They're still intense, the way emotions should be. They're hot.
This is after the transformation, you're saying?
Yes.
So like somebody in that example, you'd say they do some kind of work and they come across that emotion that was frustrated. They heal it, and now it becomes what you said, an intelligent emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Because now it has the flexibility, but it's almost like it has that, it learned that lesson. This emotion was protecting me beforehand, but now it's had a transformation. Now I have from this emotion that wisdom, so to speak. It's from whatever the situation is. I can now think about that trauma or whatever, and now the emotion is separate from it.
Except
like
that the heart,
whenever I can bring to mind, or a person, God forbid, can bring to mind something that happened to them that used to make them frustrated, but now they can just talk about it without the emotion connected to it.
That's the brain doing it. See, you can't say the heart will think about it or bring to mind. No, we're talking about the heart. The heart now has the flexibility of, I don't have to feel what I'm feeling. That's the beauty of it. The heart can let go, not think. It still can't think. It's a heart.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not any smarter in that sense. It has become a little more like the brain in that it doesn't.
Like,
It,
and that's
it,
flexible.
right. It doesn't go into a cramp.
Yeah. It's not rigid. It's not stuck. Like we learn that also. I mean, that's on the part of the brain with neuroplasticity, but that governs what's going on in the heart and throughout the body. So you're saying that the heart has the ability to be flexible, to change.
Right. For a good example, I think would be usually the change in the heart comes from new information. You panicked, your heart is pumping double time, your face is red, everything is, signaling danger because you were told there was a danger. Then the mind comes back and says, I checked it out, there's no danger.
Yeah.
Okay, everything goes back to normal. But imagine a person is in a really, really bad mood, angry, offended, and whatever, and you make a really good joke about anything, not relevant to the issue. And you get the guy to laugh. All of a sudden, he's not angry, he's not, what happened? This was not your mind giving you new information. You got the guy to laugh. And all of a sudden, he's not so rigid. You softened or you loosened up the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So, a guy is really angry and you say, do you have to be angry or do you want to be angry? Would you like to stop being angry or no, that's not an option. Usually, you're talking to the wall. The emotions won't budge, you'll just get them angrier. But just like a good laugh, a little humor can diffuse and all of a sudden he's flexible.
Yeah.
Okay, it was just, fine.
No longer stressed.
I don't have to be stressed. It's liberating.
Yeah.
So that is something to practice.
To realize with to cultivate that awareness and realize possibility in any
that an emotion is not the final,
yeah,
inevitable outcome.
Yeah.
So I think a good expression AA uses, don't believe everything you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you feel it. It's a feeling. It's not everything. It's just a feeling. It can come, it can go. It's just a feeling.
Yeah.
But to the heart, that's the totality of all reality. You just got me angry. And now I am anger. What do you want me to do? There's no way out.
Mm.
Angry is angry. That's it. But if you soften the heart up a little bit, to the point where the heart itself has become reasonable, not intelligent. Reasonable means it doesn't have to be like this. But with children whose mind is not yet developed, the emotions are so rigid.
Yeah. I see.
So that's the difference between subjective and objective. Subjective sees no other reality. Objective is open to suggestion.
Very nice.